The CEO said, "Fix my plane and I'll grant one wish." The single dad said, "My daughter needs a mom." The hangar went silent when the billionaire pointed at the mechanic and said, "Fix my plane by morning, and I'll grant you anything you ask." Everyone expected the man to ask for money. Nobody expected what he actually said next. Tom Riley had worked at Denver Executive Airfield for 6 years. He was quiet, careful, and always the last one to leave. His daughter, Emma, was 7 years old, with a gap in her front teeth and a habit of drawing pictures of birds on napkins. Since her mother passed 2 years ago, it had just been the two of them. Tom kept a photo of his late wife taped inside his toolbox. Every night, Emma asked the same question. "Daddy, when is Mommy coming home?" Tom never knew how to answer. That night, a private jet made an emergency landing. The owner, Richard Coleman, was furious, tired, and used to getting his way. He didn't know that fixing his plane would lead to a promise he never expected to keep. Richard Coleman didn't trust anyone touching his jet. He watched Tom from the doorway, arms crossed, phone buzzing non-stop. "You have 12 hours, Richard said. "Fix it and name your price." Tom nodded but didn't smile. Money wasn't what kept him up at night. As Tom worked under the engine, Emma sat nearby on a fuel drum, swinging her legs, coloring a picture of a woman with brown hair. Richard noticed. "Who's that?" he asked. Emma looked up, completely honest the way only children can be. "That's the mom I'm drawing for my daddy," she said. "He needs one." Richard's face changed for just a second. Then he walked away without a word. Something about that answer stayed with him longer than he wanted to admit. By midnight, Tom was covered in grease, exhausted, but still working. Richard came back holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Tom without saying much. "Rough divorce?" Richard finally asked. "No," Tom said quietly. "She's gone. Cancer." Richard didn't respond right away. He just looked at Emma, asleep now on a folded blanket near the toolbox. Something about the picture she'd been drawing kept nagging at him. Richard had built an empire, 3 companies, a mansion in Aspen, but he went home to an empty house every night too. His own daughter hadn't spoken to him in 5 years. Richard cleared his throat. "So when you fix this plane," he said slowly, "what do you want in return?" Tom wiped his hands and looked at him. "Nothing," he said. "I don't need anything for myself." Richard frowned. Nobody had ever said that to him before. Then Tom said something that made Richard go completely still. "My daughter doesn't need me to be rich," Tom said. "She needs a mom, and I can't give her one just because a stranger asks me to name a wish." The words landed heavier than either man expected. Richard sat down on a metal crate, quiet for the first time all night. He thought about his own daughter, about the birthday parties he missed, the calls he never answered. Around 3 a.m., Richard's phone rang. It was his assistant. "Sir, your daughter called. She wants to see you." Richard stared at the phone like it was a stranger's voice. He hadn't spoken to her in years, not since the divorce, not since he chose work over everything else. Tom noticed his hands were shaking. "You okay?" Tom asked. Richard didn't answer at first. Then he looked at Emma sleeping peacefully nearby and said, "I don't know how to fix what I broke." Tom, still holding a wrench, said quietly, "Maybe you start with one phone call." Richard looked down at his phone. Then something shifted in his eyes, something that hadn't been there in years. At sunrise, the plane roared to life, engines humming perfectly. Richard stood beside it, but instead of climbing aboard, he turned to Tom. "I told you I'd grant one wish," Richard said. "I can't give Emma a mother. That's not mine to give, but I can give you both something else." He handed Tom an envelope. Inside was a scholarship fund for Emma's education, fully paid, and a full-time mechanic position at Coleman Aviation, 3 times his current salary, with full medical coverage. Tom's hands trembled as he read it. "Why?" he whispered. Richard looked at Emma, now awake, still holding her drawing. "Because your daughter reminded me that being rich means nothing if nobody's waiting for you at home," Richard said. Then, for the first time in years, Richard called his own daughter back. She answered on the second ring. "Dad?" she said, surprised. Richard's voice cracked. I'm sorry, he said. I want to come see you, if you'll let me. There was a long pause. Then she said, I'd like that. Tom watched quietly, holding Emma's hand as a broken man found his way back to his own family. 6 months later, Tom stood at the edge of a small classroom fundraiser, watching Emma proudly show her new teacher, Miss Carter, the drawing she'd made that night in the hangar. Miss Carter had become close with Tom over the past few months, ever since she started tutoring Emma after school. Nothing was official yet, but Emma had already started drawing her in every picture. Richard came by sometimes too, usually with his daughter, who had moved back to Denver to be closer to him. The two men, once strangers from a chaotic night in a hangar, had become real friends. Richard once told Tom, "You didn't fix my plane that night. You fixed something in me." Tom simply smiled and said, "I just wanted my daughter to have someone to believe in." As Emma ran across the yard, laughing, holding Miss Carter's hand, Tom looked up at the sky, thinking of his wife, and whispered, "We're going to be okay." And sometimes the smallest voice, the simplest wish, changes the biggest hearts. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes kindness can change the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below.